Okay, so we just elected Mr. Reagan. We just elected Mr. Reagan, and almost instantly after he's elected, here's our next big number. Okay. The next big number, what I want you to put here is how Reagan establishes power. How Reagan establishes power. Now, this is going to be tricky, right? Because it doesn't seem like he's going to be establishing power because of this, but if you stick with me for a moment, I'll get you there. All right. So almost instantly, as soon as he's elected, he gets assassinated. He gets an assassination attempt. Okay. John Hinckley, the crazy man in the picture right here, he is, and I don't mean crazy like a metaphor or like insulting of people with mental disabilities. I mean crazy as in like the dude was in a mental institution and like wasn't on his medication and was like dangerously. I mean like he is the kind of he's the kind of mentally unstable person that should not be allowed to buy a gun. Um, anyway, so he had fallen in love with a character from a movie and wanted to impress the character by assassinating Jimmy Carter, and he figured that that would impress the character from the movie. And then, but Jimmy Carter didn't win the election, and so Hinckley sat around for a while until the character from the movie told him that it was okay to assassinate Reagan instead. And so that's what he did, right? He's not trying to impress the actress. He's trying to impress the character, right? I'm telling you, this dude is a nut. Okay, so he opens fire on Reagan, just barely. Here's Reagan on the ground here. Opens fire on Reagan, just barely into Reagan's presidency. We're talking like just a couple of weeks into Reagan's presidency. And during this assassination attempt, Reagan is going to be the big story coming out of it is, first of all, that the assassin was a nut, but the second of all was that Reagan was making jokes on the operating table, right? He was like joking with the ambulance drivers and like, you know, making them laugh and stuff, and like trying to be funny with the doctors and stuff. Reagan was a very popular guy. Like he knew how to, you know, be popular. He knew how to like work a crowd. He knew how to be funny. Had a lot of charisma, and so he's doing this in the hospital. That becomes like the lead story. Oh my gosh! Even though Reagan's shot, he's still making jokes, right? And then he also recovers pretty quickly, right? If you remember, one of the big things that was kind of threatening him is the fact that he's old. He's up until this point the oldest president we had ever had, right? And so they were like not really clear how good he was going to be, right? As an old man. Yes, Sam?
How old was
I think he was like 72, I think, right? He has now been passed by both Trump and Biden, right? Trump was older than Reagan and became the oldest president, and then Biden was older than Trump and became. So Biden is now the oldest president we've ever had. When Biden was elected, he was like 163 years old, I think. I think so. It's like a rough estimate. I don't remember exactly how old he is. But anyway, so Reagan first is charismatic, funny guy who gets shot, and he's also way tougher than we all thought he was. We all thought he was old, but look at him. He's recovering from his gunshot. This is going to raise his popularity up. He's going to be raised in popularity because of that personality, but he's also going to be raised in popularity because of sympathy, right? Even the people who were opposed to him are going to like him now because of sympathy, right? It's the what we call that is called the put in quotes, rally around the flag. Rally around the flag, right? This is when something bad happens to the country, everybody rallies around the person in the White House and rallies around the person in the White House to get through the crisis. We've seen this a handful of times, right? Rally around the flag was FDR on Pearl Harbor, right? Everyone agreed with FDR and supported FDR. It will happen again on 9/11, right? Everyone will support George Bush on 9/11, right? We expected it to happen with coronavirus, but Trump ended up not using it. Like he wasn't a good enough politician to use it. Like he ended up just attacking everybody and just made it worse. right? So normally when we have like a big tragedy like this, we get this rally around the flag thing. When Kennedy killed, LBJ got the rally around the flag, right? That's what happens. So Reagan is going to get that. And he gets that rally around the flag at the beginning of his presidency, the most valuable time, right? That's the most potent time of a president's power. The president is never more powerful than those first couple of months of their presidency. Everyone still likes them. Bad stuff hasn't happened yet, right? Like that's when presidents are the most powerful. So he gets like a super boost. Then that super boost is going to continue all the way into the summer, because in the summertime we're going to get a giant labor strike. We're going to get the air traffic controller strike. Air traffic controller strike. So air traffic controllers are the guys who like coordinate planes moving, in and out of airports and stuff. The air traffic controllers around the entire country go on strike because they say that they aren't paid enough. They need more money, right? This is the same letter, Sam.
Okay.
Yeah, keep it this in the same letter. And so Reagan decides to use something called the Taft-Hartley Act, and he just takes over all of the airports. He takes over all the airports. He makes all of the air traffic controllers employees of the government, and then he fires them all of them. He fires every one of them. Takes over the air traffic, all the air traffic control things around the airports around the entire country, and he says that it's a matter of national security. We have to have working airports. He says we can't be a functioning country without working airports. And so he nationalizes the airports and then fires them all. For a period of time, there's a period of like 5 or 6 months where the Air Force is running all of the airports, where the US Air Force is running the airports of the country. And a lot of the smaller airports just shut down for a couple months, right? And then the bigger airports were all run by the Air Force. This is something that you could see another president having a real problem with this, right? Like you could see this really, really blowing up in the face of another president, right? But Reagan has so much power at this. He's so popular that he's able to do this, and he has the personal charm that he's able to do this and convince everyone that it was a good thing to do. Okay, this is how Reagan rises into power. This is how Reagan is going to get everything passed that he wants to get passed. Does that make sense to you guys?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The story of the 1980s is a story of, in a lot of ways, technology. Okay. The story of our entire fourth quarter is technology. So let's go to our next big number, which should be big number D, I think. Is that right?
D, yeah.
D like David. Okay.
Yeah.
So big number D is going to be 1980s technology. We're going to put a bunch of stuff in this category. Okay, the entire fourth quarter is the tech quarter. This is the quarter where we're going to be talking about a lot of technology advancements, a lot of it. Okay, all right. So the first really big one that we really, really need to address, like change the world kind of big one that we need to address. Ooh, let's go back. Let's do this one instead. Is the space shuttle. Let's deal with the space shuttle first. Did you guys already write down computer?
No.
Oh, Emma started to. Emma, you're on mute. Oh, Emma's on mute because she's got disruptions in the background. She's got chaos in the background. I see. All right. She's got wrestling Wolverines on the couch. Okay. Anyway, while Emma is yelling at ghosts in her house, we can move on. All right. So the space shuttle debuts in 1981 in the first couple of months of Reagan's presidency, and the space shuttle here in the picture. This is the first one to launch. It's the Columbia. Okay, that's not true. The Enterprise is the first one to launch. Well, whatever. Anyway, so this is the Columbia. We create a couple of these space shuttles. I'm not sure if you guys have seen the space shuttle. It hasn't been working in a while. But this is the space shuttle here. It's the thing that looks like a plane. These big pointy parts, those are the fuel tanks. And so as it goes into space, it drops the fuel tanks, and then the fuel tanks burn up in the atmosphere, right? They burn up in the atmosphere, or later they tried to recover them later, right? With parachutes and stuff. All right. Anyway, the space shuttle is a reusable spaceship. A reusable spaceship. That's what it is. Now, a reusable spaceship is really, really tricky. It's really difficult. It takes a lot of technology to build this thing, right? This thing is really, really hard to do, right? They have been trying to create reusable spaceships for a while. They couldn't get it to work. Like, this is the one that they spent a ton of money on, okay? Now, this is the point where a lot of times people say, why do we bother with space? Why going into space? There's nothing up there. Like, why go to the moon? Who cares? What are you going to do? Find a bunch of rocks? Nobody cares about rocks. Why bother to throwing a robot onto Mars? Who cares? What are you going to find? More rocks? Right? We got rocks here. I don't need to spend $10 billion to go find rocks on some other planet. Right? And on the surface, that looks like a legitimate criticism, because you're like, why don't you spend that money on, like, making better schools, or feeding the hungry, or building houses for the homeless, or, whatever, teaching people to get better haircuts or something. Like, why don't you spend it on something that's more useful, right? Than collecting rocks on some other rock in the space. Here's the reason why. The space shuttle produced all of these things and much, much more. What really matters here is that the space race creates, for everything that the space race has to achieve, they have to invent dozens or hundreds of things in order to make that space goal work. They have to invent dozens or hundreds of things, hundreds or dozens of things, or thousands of things in order to make the goal work, right? In order to get to the moon, you had to invent the internet, right? Well, the internet has turned out to be pretty cool, right? It's turned out to be a pretty useful thing. It's where I get nearly 2/3 of my cat videos from. And and the internet has turned out to be a pretty cool thing. These are just some of the things that came out of the space shuttle race, like, right away. 3D graphics, lightning detectors, thermal protection, memory metal, fiber optic cabling, all this stuff, right? Here's the deal. Anything that's created in the space race is created using government money, taxpayer money. And if it's created using taxpayer money, then by US law, it's owned by the people. The government gives it away for free. They give it away for free. So the government will, like, take something like fiber optic cabling, right? Fiber optic cabling, which is like super fast connections and stuff, right? And then they're going to go and they say, hey, we've invented this thing. Comcast cable company goes to them and says, hey, we would really like to install fiber optic cabling in our customers' places, right? And NASA says, here you go, have it, right? Comcast gets all of the benefit of the fiber optic cabling and none of the cost. This means, and this is the last line you need on here, this means that all American companies are getting huge technological boosts because the research is free. The research and development is free. So in a really practical way, it doesn't matter that the space shuttle goes up into space. Like, they'll go up into space and they'll be like, how do mushrooms grow in zero gravity, right? Like, on the surface, that doesn't seem like a relevant thing to look at, right? But you have to think of it in a way that in order for them to grow mushrooms in space, they had to invent like 10 new things. And then they just gave them away for free. NASA, if you look on the NASA website, you can see a lot of this stuff. There's a lot of these projects where for every dollar the US puts into the project, they get X number of dollars out of the project, With the space shuttle program, the most expensive program in NASA, for every dollar they put in, they produced like $28 worth of revenue that other companies and stuff were able to get. Okay. And that's like the most expensive program out there. There's a lot of programs that are way cheaper where it's much, much bigger than that. There's one that I'm going to give you later on in a couple of weeks, where for every dollar going in, we got $340 back. Right? These are massive, massive paybacks. And that's something you need to keep in mind as we get into some of these big tech things. Does that make sense to you guys? You guys with me on that? Okay. All right. Keep it in the same number, in the same big number. We're going to put in the next one is IBM introduces the first PC. IBM introduces the first PC. Do either of you guys, have you guys heard of the company IBM? Okay, so it's not it is still one of the wealthiest companies on the planet Earth. It's called International Business Machines, is what is the name of the company. It's one of the most expensive companies in the world, still in the United States. And they basically invented the PC, personal computer. They invented the computer. They actually don't even invent anything anymore. They design things and then sell the patents to other companies, and they basically just own all the patents. And so every company on the planet that makes computers has to pay us a percentage of their profits to IBM. And so IBM just sits there and just absorbs money now. It's just like a big old money sponge today. But they invented the first PC in 1981. Look at this thing. It's revolutionary. You no longer have to count on your fingers and toes. You can now count with shoes on over the number of 10, right? It used to be that you had to wear sandals in order to count up to 20, but now you can count even higher. I know, Emma, this is a big deal, all right? Look at this. Look at the stats on this baby. This thing has 256 kilobytes. Whoa. Why would anybody need more than 256 kilobytes of computing power? This is so much computing power, right? 16 kilobytes of RAM. It can run almost one whole program at a time, right? This thing is phenomenal, right? This is a black screen with the green writing on it, right? This thing is costing, if you put it in today's money, it was $10,000 for a new computer. I'm being a joke here, right? But of course, this is like one of the most world-changing events of all, right? This is, I mean, the world is completely, radically, totally different in every way. Okay, we're gonna do some of this stuff later. We're gonna do, okay, here's another one. The first artificial heart. Keep this in the same big number. We'll do two more. We'll do the artificial heart, and then I have one more coming for you. The artificial heart is created in Utah, baby. Woo! In the University of Utah, right? Utah Pride. Go Beehive. All right. And, you know, I like to point out when Utah makes it on the list, right? Right? Usually we're just kind of like a desert wasteland with a bunch of weirdos in it. But once in a while we do things, you know, big hearts. So these are the two guys who invented it. Jarvik is the like engineer designer. DeVries is like the medical doctor who installs it. And they put in the first artificial heart into somebody in 1982, where the guy has a heart attack. They take out his heart and they replace it with a machine for the first time ever. Pretty cool, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Here's the deal. When they did this, they had a huge backlash. They had a huge backlash. People were like protesting. People were upset. They were angry, right? They were angry about this. They said that by creating an artificial heart, you're playing God. That God meant for that guy to die from a heart attack, and you are insulting God by keeping him alive. Emma, you seem unconvinced by that argument. What do you think?
I don't know. I just think that's kind of interesting. Like, I've never heard that argument before, and it's like, oh whoa, people have thought that something. I don't know.
Yeah. What do you think of that argument, Sam?
The like protesting, like saying that it's not like technically ethical.
Yeah, you're playing God, man.
I can see where they come from. However, like, what about in cases where, let's say, this person was kicked off a building or like not natural? So if it was like a natural heart attack, that's one thing. But if it was something that was inflicted from another person, I feel like that's another thing. Like, you can't say that was intended by God when a person just like stabbed you in the heart with a knife.
So DeVries makes the argument that we play God all the time. Every time I give somebody penicillin, I'm playing God because I'm choosing that they live and not the bacteria. Right? Every time I treat them with a bandage, like if you've cut yourself and I treat you with a bandage, I'm playing God. I'm not letting you just die from bleeding, right? Like I'm playing God with stitches, I'm playing God with bandages, I'm playing God with medicine, I'm playing God everything, right? And so he makes the argument, this isn't any different, right? This is just medical science advancing. This vocal argument is going to exist. And the reason I'm presenting the argument now, I don't want you to think that the entire country was thinking about this because they weren't, right? It's like this vocal minority of people who are really upset, okay? So I don't want you to get the wrong impression. But as we move further in the timeline, we're going to start getting into things like genetic modification and like rewriting people's DNA and stuff like that. And so the question is going to keep coming up. Are you going to play God? Are you playing God? Are you playing God? Are you playing God? That question is going to be constantly following the medical profession as we move forward. And this is our first really big step in that direction, that they're going to get that resistance. So I just I'm setting this up. See what I'm doing is I'm building dramatic tension. So in the future, you can see it and you can call back to it and go, oh yeah. You see? Hashtag building connections. All right. Anyway, there's nothing as awesome as like old people saying hashtag something. All right. So, all right. Let's do one more. Here we go. One more. In 1987, Microsoft Windows is invented. 1987, Microsoft Windows. I'm telling you, the entire fourth quarter is dominated by technology. Technology is the thing. All right, so Windows is really important. It's what we call an operating system. Windows is an operating system. So it is the system that allows people to use the computer. Before Windows existed, you had to type in codes in order to make your computer do anything. So you basically had to be like fluent in computer languages in order to do stuff. Okay? But Windows changes the game. Okay, they have two big inventions that we really, really care about. The first invention is something called a mouse. I mean a computer mouse, not the animal mouse. The animal mouse was invented sometime earlier in the 60s. But the computer mouse was invented in 1987. Now, stick with me here real quick, but I'm going to define this for you. A computer mouse is a computer tool that allows you to move a cursor on the screen. Is that going too fast? You think you guys know what a mouse is yet?
Mm-hmm.
It's a computer tool that allows you to move a cursor on the screen and interact with the computer. Now, you guys are laughing a little bit, right? Or you're not laughing as much as you should laugh, but you're laughing slightly. And what we're saying here is that the mouse, the fact that you guys find it silly for me to even define what a mouse is, kind of tells you how important Windows is, Microsoft Windows, right? That this is such a transformative thing that even like 3-year-olds know what a mouse is, right? How old were you when you used your first computer? 3?
I can
Probably
remember.
like kindergarten or something.
Yeah.
Like when my parents got a computer.
Yeah. Like really realistically, as a baby, you probably had already like touched and interacted with computers even before you could talk and walk. Because you're probably sitting on your dad's lap or on your mom's lap, and then you were like pushing the mouse around while they're trying to type and do work, right? Probably, right? That's a high likelihood of that happening, right? And you probably were using it on your own by 3 or 4 years old. Probably, right? Because
Just like shaking it.
sure, yeah, I mean,
Doing
yeah,
shake.
sure, right? But you're already watching the cursor move,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Okay. This is a invention changed the world. But the one that really, really matters is what we call a GUI. A GUI, it's a GUI. You guys know what that means? It's a
No.
it's a graphic user interface. A graphic user interface. A GUI. This is the game changer. The GUI puts images on the screen instead of computer code. It puts images on the screen instead of computer code and allows the user to interact with the images. What we mean here, of course, is you can point at something and double click it and it'll open. Okay. When Microsoft does this in 1987, this is the thing that makes computers go around the world. Because everyone on the planet can use a computer. You do not need to be some super nerd from Silicon Valley to use a computer now. Now everyone can use a computer. Even dumb little kid, Mr. Veenstra, when I was a little kid, playing with a computer in 1988 or 1989, and I didn't know what I was doing. I had my first computer programming class in 1985, or 87, I think, 87, 88, where I had to program an image of a rocket ship and then make it take off. And it took me an entire semester to do that. That's when I knew I would never want to be a computer programmer. I was like, oh God. I'm like, it took me like 3 months to program a stupid rocket ship. Yeah. Anyway, we're gonna leave that there. You guys okay with that? Okay, we're gonna come back to technology a lot, right? The technology of today is so radically different. So we're gonna come back to here quite a bit. Cool. All right, I'm gonna stop the recording.